Hey, we're live. Welcome, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Happy lunch hour.
Yes, and my liquid lunch. Those
Yeah,
everybody knows coffee is a food group in our industry. It's
it's
not the
true.
first coffee lunch I've had in this business. So
It's true. It's true. Yep, absolutely. But it's okay. I mean, it's delicious and I don't know. I guess I
and
have to
nutritious,
yeah, I guess. Ha.
I think.
Well, for all of you tuning in, welcome to our Friday at noon discussion. We've been having fun over the last four times. I think this is our fifth, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's been really cool to see the discussion growing organically. Ben and I were just talking about that in the Facebook group. So if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't joined our Facebook group, we would love to have you. It'd be so great. And for those of you who are new, I'm Andrea Olson, and this is Ben Stowe from NLFX Pro, the amazing, infamous Ben Stowe.
Well, I think you got the wrong Ben Stowe, but I'll settle for that.
You
So
take it. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Well, we've been talking about live streaming because it's like the hot topic of 2020. And if you were tuned in last week, we talked a little bit about the specifics of kind of how and where, but we didn't talk anything about mixing because as Ben, as you mentioned last week, and also as we've discussed, it's a whole different animal and just something that is needs to be addressed separately and have kind of its own little section. So that's what we're going to talk about today, guys. So if you have questions as we go and you're watching, you can type them in the comments on Facebook. I don't know if you can do that on YouTube. Probably.
I
I
think
think
you
so.
can. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I think you can comment on YouTube and it'll show up in our little gizmo.
Little thing. Cool.
Yeah, a little. Let's
So,
say point correctly down. It probably shows up over about
about
well on
there.
your side. Eh,
I don't
I
know.
don't know where I'm at on the screen. All right.
Yes. So I'll just kick it off talking about what I learned a little bit this year from live stream mixing. And the gist of it was that it really needs to be addressed entirely separately from your front of house mix because it's a little bit more like a recording studio, but not because you can't necessarily go back and edit it, right? It's like if you have something that's going off the wire or a vocalist that's singing the wrong part, you need to be able to hear that and adjust that accordingly because if you don't
Mhm.
it's heard on the live stream. And so for us, for the Overflow Worship Conference, of course we had a whole separate like mix room and had to set that up because it was a big event. But how, just maybe a quick introductory statement here, Ben, on how can churches address this separate mix without, investing $100,000 in a quiet room with a different mixer and, all of that. What are the first couple of steps that they could take? Hi, Lance.
Oh yeah, yeah. First, hi, Lance. Thanks for joining us. Well, what you said is right on the money in that it's an entirely separate mix, and we'll talk about why in a little bit here. But I think to your question on the how and where, that's really situational. If you
Okay.
have the ability to create an entirely separate room or space for that mix, great. But of course, that means another mix platform, whether it's a software based solution or whether it's an actual separate console,
Okay.
and of course, a separate operator. And that gets hardest, of course, in a hybrid environment where you have a live service happening. So you need to mix for those people.
Yeah.
And you have a broadcast mix happening. What's called a broadcast mix, stream mix, because then you do, in fact, have two mixes. If you don't have in person worship, well, then I suppose for now, you still can get by with one operator and one
Yeah.
mix platform and that sort of thing. But I think it's still important to try to remove that operator from the live space.
Okay.
And again, we'll talk about the why in a little bit. Excuse me. So I think as far as how to do it without spending $100,000, or even, I mean, you can certainly spend way less than that.
Yeah, that was a like
Good,
a
a good,
overshot.
yeah,
I was
dramatization.
joking. Yeah. I mean, not that that's out of the realm of possibility for it's very possible to need
Oh
that
yeah,
much money
there's
for
several
it.
mixing consoles alone cost more
Ex-
than that. SD7,
exactly.
SD5, yeah. So
Yeah.
Uh, basically, a couple ways you can do it. One, you can duplicate the audio coming in digitally if you have that ability with a digital console, and most do,
Okay.
using something like AES or Dante. And the technology is going to be specific to your board. So this is a
Mhm.
great plug to just jump in the group and talk to some people.
Yeah.
Um, but from there, you can then send it to a second console, really not unlike how we might do it in the tour world with front of house and monitor.
Sure.
And so we kind of think about it that way, having two different desks.
Okay.
Or many consoles have the ability to mix from an iPad or a computer.
Okay.
So we could, in essence, mix from glass. We might be able to still do it with one desk and two operators, one working on the desk and the other one working on glass. Uh,
Okay. You do you mean
this,
like a device? Like an
right,
I
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. When I say glass, I mean like a touch screen, like an
Okay.
iPad. Where the broadcast mix maybe is done from the iPad and the other mix is done. And then, of course, you could go to another room and go lock yourself in a closet and, and we'll
The
talk about an
custodial
important
closet. I mean,
consideration for
whatever
that.
works.
Yeah, exactly. Just go do what you got to do. Nobody puts a sound guy in the closet.
Yeah.
Um, but the other way, would be, well, I guess an important consideration before I jump into the other way, the important consideration for that is if you're using the same desk, if you're sharing the desk and one of you's mixing remotely and one of you's mixing on the desk, make sure that you're, first of all, that you get along, uh, and
Yeah.
and that you know what each other is doing, because as you make changes, some of them will be applied globally. Even though the broadcast mix is now basically a separate bus, and we're maybe mixing it as an aux bus type thing,
Mhm.
let's just make sure that what we're doing there doesn't create problems for the main house mix. And
Yeah.
some of the things to think about right away would be like effects. When we mix for broadcast, and I'm starting to segue right in. My segue won't be as good as yours last week, but I'll
Oh.
segue kind of right into the what. But think about your listeners as being in outer space. I mean, they are completely in a vacuum, just like you are right now. You're not
Mhm.
hearing anything acoustic from me other than what's coming through my microphone.
Yep.
So that mix has to be very different for those people. And some of those things might be things like effects to add a little bit of reverb into the space, and maybe not just on a channel by channel basis like we might in a live mix, but we might want to put something into the whole mix.
Mhm.
Now, key here is make it sound like the room looks. You know,
Yeah.
don't put a huge reverb on a small room, because it just isn't going to look right or sound right to the listener. Their brain's going to say that's something's not right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, so then second console, or would be another option, and yet a third option would be to use something like Studio One from Presonus,
Yeah.
and they have like their little fader interfaces, and it's basically designed for recording studio use, but
Okay.
it actually works incredibly well for live use, and it's sort of a I want to say a poor man's console, but for a few $100, you can
Hmm.
have some tactile faders, and you can
Mhm.
have a really well featured DAW. Actually, hey, let me pull it up here real quick.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. That's amazing. So it's a hardware and a software, right? That you have got like a little mixer that you work with the Pro Tool, or I'm sorry, the Presonus software, Studio One.
yeah, exactly. And as you
Okay.
can see, so I can have my tracks coming in, and all that's fine and well.
Yep.
But I also can have this kind of like a mixing board where I can, I have panning and I have dynamics, and
Yep.
unlike maybe a traditional console, here it's a bit more plug-in based. So I can go in and say, well, I want to put a gate in here. I want to grab this compressor or that compressor. I can kind of choose some of the characteristics of what I want each of those inputs to be, and then I can send that out live. Of course, I can have some busing ability, things like that, things like we might traditionally call, like DCAs or subgroups or
Yeah.
something in the live sound world.
Okay.
So basically, by using that software, and you can get Studio One Prime for free, I believe, or you
Okay.
can upgrade to forget what the next level is, and then there's Pro,
Yeah.
and you can get an unlimited amount of plugins. And in fact, my studio friends joke about that. And you, of course, recorded many times. I'm sure you talked to the engineers about their endless book of plugins.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
Yes. So, I love this option largely because it's economical and it could be great for a church setting that is limited in budget, but they really want to step up their game with live stream. Because I think the
Mhm.
conversations that I've had, and I would imagine yours are the same, that everybody really realizes that live stream isn't going away.
Oh no.
Even once we're back in person, like the church that we attend, they're treating their live stream like a whole separate campus.
Right.
Like it's a ministry to those who, whether they want to attend but they're gone or they just can't, right? They're ill or they're elderly or whatever, and they can still be a part of the community. So just because my brain is curious and maybe someone else is out there too. So if you're coming from your desk to something like Studio One and that little mini console that you talked about, is
Mhm.
that a wireless configuration or is that a Dante? Is it a hardwired? Like, how do they connect those two?
Well, so it's become a bit of a bit cliche that I say this in another show that I frequently do, but it depends,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure I stole that from somebody else. But anyway, it depends on what the console has the ability to easily output. Basically, if
Okay.
you can get the audio into your computer, that's all that matters. And there's
Okay.
several different ways you can do that. You can do it even with like a USB connection from the board.
Yep.
However, take note that that severely limitates you on distance from the
Yes.
console. So something like Dante is going to give you 100 meters, 328 feet.
Okay.
There's things like AES, several kinds of AES 10, AES 50. There's several different digital audio transports. So that really does come back to being console specific. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and we could look at again, every situation is going to be somewhat unique. You can say, well, gosh, we could do that, by maybe it makes more sense to just get a second desk with another Dante card and then we use Dante Manager or whatever, but it's really situational.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But it's good to know that it I guess that it can be situational, right? Because that means that it could be any of the above. It's just kind of based on what fits best for their context and the other board that they have and all of that. So I think
Right.
that's great.
Exactly. And it may, I don't want to scare anybody here, but, if you're using a small old analog board,
Hmm.
it might be a situation where, the best course is to upgrade that desk and to say,
Yeah.
well, now's the time to make the leap. Just because the weakest link in the chain here is going to be the problem.
Yeah. And would you, and again, I know that you're going to laugh when I ask you this question because there are a thousand different options for good digital desks. However, you and I have talked a lot about the Presonus digital boards and how great they are and economical, and it depends. That is the Ben Stroke quote of the year, Keaton. Yes. But would, for a church in the small to medium context that does have an old analog board that probably needs to be replaced anyway, what would
Probably, yeah.
you recommend? Is that a good route to look into? Is one of the Presonus mixing
Yeah,
consoles?
they've come a long ways, really. They were kind of early with their original Studio Live, and then they kind of got leapfrogged a bit, and I think they fell behind. And I think they've really done a really good job of kind of coming back to the front of the pack
Okay.
for low cost, well featured digital boards. The new Studio Live boards are really pretty well featured. Again, the name implies studio live. They try to sort of walk that line, which
Mm,
from a live streaming standpoint is pretty advantageous. It's not just
okay.
a live board. It's really kind of set up like a studio board,
Yep.
plugs in seamlessly with all their software. So that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
But there's some other great options. Like you said, there's a lot to look at. Allen and Heath has some great options, and I think, there's a lot of good ones out there to look at.
Yeah.
Uh,
From a just this is just a quick side note, and then we should veer back to the live stream thing. But from a user friendly standpoint, I know
mhm.
for us, back, I think it was, man, it was probably 10 years ago when we switched our console at the church we were at to a Presonus digital board from like a Mackie analog board.
Mhm.
And it was great because we had a lot of youth team members who were
Mhm.
just wanting to learn to run sound. And so it was a really good board for that. It was user friendly, it was easy to teach. Uh, is that still the case with Presonus? And have the other, you know, companies that are kind of in the main, yeah, Allen and Heath, Do they have great user friendly options as well?
I think they've actually gotten easier. In
Okay.
fact, we upgraded from a Studio Live to a Studio Live Series 3 at my church. And I've talked to a few of our broadcasts here about my church's sound guy being
Yeah.
81
Yes,
and
that's
not a
true.
sound guy. He's not
Yeah.
really he's a volunteer who's agreed to take on this role. And he was really worried about the new board. He thought, oh my gosh, it's got more lights and bells and whistles and it's got a touch screen. And he thought it was going to be more overwhelming. But in fact, it delivers the information in a much more user friendly way. So he's actually much more comfortable with it.
Okay.
And so I find it to be, yeah, very easy to use. I think as boards have evolved, they've gotten easier.
Okay.
Again, Alan Heath makes great boards too. It's hard to say that they're bad or hard to use, but I
Sure.
do think the Presonus boards are very easy to use.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So with back to mixing for live stream, I'm actually the one who took us off on that tangent, but I just wanted to
That's good.
clarify
Tangents. I like tangents. Tangents are one of my favorite things.
clarify a few things because I figured if I'm wondering, someone else probably is too. So, uh, going back to, we were talking about finding maybe a separate mix room, get them out of the live room, and we were talking specifics about how to do that and then how to communicate, making sure we have a good relationship, between the both of the mix engineers so that they aren't affecting
Right.
one another in a negative way, like effects and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we left off. Um, where should we go from here? What are a couple, maybe two other things that are really important for people to pay attention to if they're new to mixing for live stream?
I got I got a couple other things to toss in here, and I apologize. My phone is ringing. Let me just set do not disturb. This is live TV, folks.
Live, we're live.
Yes, we are live. So, uh, one of the things I didn't mention with the engineers getting along, which is really important, and is absolutely a factor. Real quick, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself. We've got this comment from Neil.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think it really is a very easy and fun board to mix on, Neil. And
Cool.
and in fact, that's what we used the Series 3 for your conference. Just if for no other reason, one, it had the built-in SD card reader, so we could give everybody tracks to mix on very easy, just pop it into their desk. And two, it was a board that we felt everybody could kind of learn to get around very quickly,
Yeah.
so we could focus on mixing and not focus on learning the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is probably one of the most challenging things is that all boards work kind of the same way, but they have a little bit different workflow.
Mhm.
You can go from a Digico to an Avid to an Allen Heath. Uh, Things are just going to be in a little bit different place, and they're going to
Mhm.
be just a little different. Those nuances can kind of trip you up. So
Mhm.
I think that's why I would say it's kind of situational for your church. If there's a mixed platform you're comfortable working with, probably should stick to that, unless there's a compelling reason not
Okay.
to. Excuse me, I've got this little tickle in my throat, and it's not COVID.
Yeah.
But
It's just because we're live and you can't cough. And
I
so it's
know
just like,
it's the worst.
it
It's the
is.
worst.
It's the worst for sure.
So,
So,
one of the things I wanted to mention about sharing a desk, though, is preamps.
okay.
And if you're splitting out the signal digitally, same thing. So, even if we're using something like Dante or AES, we still only have one preamp. And that means that whoever's in charge of that preamp, which is what takes the signal into the board and adjusts its level to then be distributed within the board to all buses, main bus, everything, that will affect everybody.
Okay.
So that's another reason for the two engineers to get along.
Yeah.
Good gain structure. The second operator, if they're mixing on an iPad and they have access to those preamps, any change they make will affect the first operator, and that's going to be. Um, if you are friends, you probably won't be by the end of the service. So,
Yes. Yes. So how, and again, just a logistical question, what's the best way for them to communicate to each other if they're, one is in the closet across the hall and the other one's in the room? Like I know in live events, right? They have comms, they have that kind of
right.
thing, but do you just say, hey, just text each other, that kind of thing to try to stay in communication with one another?
Yeah, one, I'd say get it done in rehearsal and sound check. Preamps really shouldn't be adjusted throughout the mix if you can really help it.
Yeah.
You know, And I think it's kind of like any partnership, it's going to take some evolution, communication before and after, hey, when you did that, that caused me a problem. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. Oh, okay.
Totally.
you know During, yeah, probably text message or something like that. I mean, you could, if you have the ability to do comms, that's great. We have a pretty cool little old telephone looking thing that we put a handset on, and I built an LED flasher in it. So
Nice.
because as a sound person, you don't wear comms all the time, so how do you
Right.
know when somebody wants to talk to you? Well, the flasher goes off.
Oh,
And I think
perfect.
Neil has seen our pretty epic phones. You know what?
That's
Actually, I could find a picture. I mean, we can we can tangent. We got 5 minutes to spare.
Let's see it. That's amazing.
Let me
I
find
love it.
this.
Well, while you're finding that photo, I'll just, speaking of, cool little gadgets and fun little things, I will mention the giveaway because we talked about that
Yes.
yesterday, Ben. And so I'm doing a giveaway on my Andrea Olson Music social media sites, and we'll just link it in the Facebook group for you guys. But if you head to my socials at Andrea Olson Music, you'll find it too. But so I reached out to Ben I don't know, a month ago or so and was like, hey, do you want to be a part of this giveaway? And of course, because he's so generous and kind, was like, yes, I would love to. I would love to bless some people. And so we are among the 7 items. We're giving away an Electro Voice RE20 black microphone from
Brand
NLFX
new
Pro.
black.
Yeah, the brand new black, which is so cool. And I'm so excited about that. And then also the cable tester from you guys as well. And those are like the two, like, oh, see, look, I'm doing it too. I'm trying to like make sure my fingers in the camera. Ah, those are the two, biggest items that are in the gift box and they come from NLFX Pro. So thanks, Ben. You guys are so kind to add that in. But do you want to say anything about the microphone? I could talk about it, but you know even more about it than I do. And the cable tester, do you want to give a brief little snippet about it?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So the RE20 is probably the de facto broadcast standard in the world. Also, actually, surprisingly, works really good on kick drum and things too. But sort of a multi-purpose mic. But really, it's known for its use in broadcast, and it's always been kind of a silvery champagne color.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing has changed except the color. But that's something people have been asking for. We want it black. We want it black. We want it black. And so this, you can be one of the very first people in the world to have one of these RE20 microphones in black, and it's worth about $450. This is
Yeah.
a real deal. Yeah, this is a real deal, Mike. And the Moat, well, that is the mother of all testers. That's where the
Yes.
name Moat comes from, and it is a
Mother of
great
all
way to
testers.
test the cables that you're going to use in your AV rig. Really an awesome way to quickly diagnose and troubleshoot problems, to also make sure the cables are wired the way you want them to be. Sometimes it's not a defective cable, it's just wired for a different purpose, and that will
Mm-hmm.
identify very quickly what's going on with that cable. So an essential thing for everybody's toolbox, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and I think for in the church context, I mean, how many times have I sat in a sound check and one of the instrumentalists or, the sound tech is swapping out cable after cable because something's not connecting, something's not working. So I love this cable tester. That's amazing. And the microphone, I think it's great for the church context because like you said it's versatile, right? And
Very.
especially if
Yeah.
there people are doing like simulated lives and the live stream, like all of that stuff. It'll be so great for that. So, thank you, Ben, for being a part of this giveaway. And you guys can go ahead and enter to win that and some other cool things as well. And the giveaway ends on, I think, Wednesday of next week. So you'll want to
Oh, you better get in there.
hop in and do that, guys, if you want the amazing $450 microphone for free
If
for
there's
Christmas.
about uh, if there's about 100 entries from somebody named not Ben Stowe, it's not Ben
It's
Stowe.
not
Just so
Ben
you know.
Stowe. I got
Yep.
it. Gotcha.
Well,
Sounds good. We will take that into consideration as we filter through.
So
Oh, here's
here's
the
the uh,
phone.
here's the picture, and my friend Rob has no idea he's going to be in this show.
Hi, Rob.
But anyway, here you can see the phone, and you can see that this base is actually completely non-functional. Its only job is to hold the handset, but the
Oh,
flasher
I see.
there then is triggered by the comm flasher, and it's just our way to be able to communicate with each other from
Yeah,
front of house and monitor.
of
So
course.
that's one way to do it. You mentioned a couple other things that are important, and I think that as we're running out of time, I want to squeeze in a couple quick things here.
Yeah.
Again, going back to imagining that your viewer is in outer space. Are they listening to the mix on their computer, on their phone? You know, sometimes I'll participate in our church has kind of a pre-church coffee hour, and I'll just set my phone on the table while I have my coffee, and so
Hmm.
I'm listening to that on my phone. Are they
Hmm.
listening to it on AirPods or the AirPod Max headphone things? That's I don't get me started on that. But anyway, you have to think about the fact that the listening experience is going to be very different based on what they're
Yep.
listening on.
Yep.
So, a couple of really quick tips without getting deep into this rabbit hole, and boy, you can you. Uh, Number one, most of these devices don't have a lot of low end. And so you don't want to take all the low end out of your mix because some of them do headphones and certainly monitor speakers.
Hmm.
But we have to think about what that effect is on the overall mix. If
Okay.
you're listening to it on something like a phone and you mix it in a system that has subwoofers and lots of low end response, you're going to find that when you listen to it on that device, it's going to sound really thin. The vocals might be just screaming because you maybe mixed them to cut through that bottom end.
Okay.
So really got to think about controlling the bottom end.
Hmm.
And you also have to think about things like, where is your kick drum going to happen? It's not going to happen at 50 hertz because the iPhone does not produce 50 hertz.
Okay.
So we're going to need that strong transient attack. Uh, One of our Facebook users says, yes, helpful. Good. Thank you. um, so we have to think about, where that is. And one of the easiest ways to do this, I think, is to mix in context. Listen to your own live stream.
Yeah.
Step away from the board and listen to it on the phone. Listen to it on small speakers.
Hmm.
Something like that to try to get in their context. Um, and in
Okay.
fact, when my church started doing this before we quit meeting in person, and we're not meeting in person right now, but that was one of the things I would do is I would help our sound guy by going out into the
Hmm.
narthex and listen to it on my phone. And it was kind of funny because some of the older people in the church, got a little upset. They said, there's church going on and you're out here on your phone. I know
I'm
I'm
helping.
working, but they thought I was just watching YouTube or something.
You were
But
watching the game, Ben. You were.
yes, exactly. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to hear what those people hear. And a couple
Hmm.
things that are really important there, one is thinking about how that mix sounds on that device, controlling the bottom end, keeping the mix, where the vocals are present, but not,
Hmm.
screaming. But another thing is to think about, is it stereo or is it mono?
Hmm.
I love stereo panning. I love
Okay.
stereo imaging. Uh, but we have to be really careful when that comes back to a mono device. And we can lose a lot of the guts of a sound if we have
Hmm.
things that when they're
Okay.
mixed back to mono come out of phase. And phase is, kind of a fancy word for time, but we're also talking about where the peaks and valleys, as it were, of a sine wave align.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
so here again, listening in context will help you. You go, wow, this sounds terrible on my phone. Why is that? We can start going back in to figure out why and make some changes. Uh,
Okay.
you know, bring some of those things back to center.
Yeah.
Some of the programs, and I'll just do this very, very quick, like Studio One, have things like phase meters and they'll show correlation.
Hmm.
And so I'll just play a very quick clip. It'll be very quick because YouTube's got copyright rules and all that good stuff. But see if I can find it here to share it. Okay, we see that? Good.
Hmm.
So straight up and down, this is going to show a mono signal, and then we can see things start to go left to right as well. And down below, we see this correlation. And anything that's negative is going to cause cancellation. And I'm sort of oversimplifying this, but
Yeah.
anything that's negative correlation is going to cause cancellation when summed back to mono. And I have a really cool kick drum demo. Now, I don't think you'll hear much of the audio because you'll only hear what's coming out of my speakers through my mic.
Sure. Okay.
So first of all, viewers, if the audio doesn't sound good, you're not hearing it actually. And second of all, that's not the point. So
Yeah.
let's just play something real quick here if I can. So you can see the finger snaps are really wide. They're really imaged all the way across.
Yep.
But you can see kick drum is almost completely mono.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can sort of see the difference there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead and kill that. One other thing that's cool about this, I just want to mention too, is there's a level meter here. and this will allow us to track our measurement in LUFS, which is loudness units full space.
Okay.
We'll jump to another thing on that real quick, but I want to show you. Well, I don't know how well it would correlate, but I've got a demo that I actually did for your group.
Okay.
Um, and what I did, let me just load this project real quick here.
Sounds
Bring up
good.
my phase meter. All right.
Everybody waiting in
That's it.
suspense.
I know, right? So what I have here is I have two identical kick drum tracks. It's
Okay.
the same kick drum track, literally just cloned,
Okay.
and completely in phase. So you can see that you basically can't even see the line. It is
Yeah.
so perfectly mono.
Yep.
Okay. Now, let me do this. I'm going to invert one, and you can see as soon as I inverted it, that correlation goes just crazy down,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
And in fact, you can you can't really hear on this broadcast, but it now sounds terrible. It just
Yeah.
sounds completely gutless. Whereas I bring it back in, now there's some body to it again. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Oops, wrong thing. Give me 1 second. Trying to click between windows and I clicked the wrong one.
The eternal kick drum will just
Yes, we'll
continue as
just keep
we
listening to this. And
head
it's
off
just a
out of the
raw,
broadcast.
unprocessed kick drum track, by the way. But anyway, we can see here now it's at 100%, perfectly aligned correlation because they're in phase, they're identical, and here you
Hmm.
can see it's gone completely the opposite way. Now
Yeah.
they're completely out of phase. And what happens when I sum this into a mono signal is uh, it is still playing, but there is absolutely no sound whatsoever,
Because
none,
it's canceled out.
completely canceled.
Yep.
And so anything in between, any variation of that is going to cause the same thing where,
Okay.
again, it could take some of the guts out of it. That's how noise canceling headphones work. So
Right. Right. Okay.
uh, something to be really careful of.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on a very small desk, you're probably not doing a lot of fancy things anyway. Maybe some of this is really confusing and overwhelming. Um, it's just sort of, I think, to know that it's there,
Yeah.
to think
Yeah.
about that this is real.
Absolutely.
Something else to look at. Somebody just mentioned Luffs here, and again, Facebook users, if you click the little link and approve StreamYard to show your name will show up in the stream, and then we know who you are, and we appreciate that. Otherwise, you could be anonymous. That's all right. There is a website, and I'm kind of rushing here. We're running out of time, but there
Yeah.
is a website called Loudness Penalty
Okay.
where we can analyze tracks.
Okay.
Now, this is not going to be something you can do live,
Okay.
but it's something you can do to analyze some songs. So let's do this. Let's
So after the
analyze
fact, if they pulled their recording in or
exactly.
something, they could analyze it here. Okay.
Yes, and really important thing I need to mention is don't pull your recording from YouTube or iTunes or wherever you're putting it because they'll already be affected by those devices. So pull
Yep.
your local recording,
Yep.
which is always a good idea to have. Pull your
Hmm.
local recording and you can analyze that.
Okay.
So here's some examples real quick.
Okay. Sounds good.
Let's take test file number 2, and you can see it's now analyzing this.
Okay.
And it's going to tell us, and I've got 3 files here to show sort of, like the Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right? So this file was a little bit low. So you can see that Spotify is actually going to boost it by 2 dB, iTunes is going to boost it by 3 dB, and Pandora
Okay.
is going to boost it by 2.4.
Okay.
YouTube title, they don't boost. So
Okay.
your song isn't going to sound as loud or,
Okay.
and maybe as good.
Okay.
All right, so let's try another one real quick here.
Okay. Cool. Well, and this
And
is like you say, it's helpful because sometimes I think the question for people is like, well, it's just so soft. Why isn't it louder? And doing something like this, you can see, at least give you a framework and a starting point.
Well, and I'll tell you
Okay.
what, there's a mastering trick for you, and I'm certainly by no means a studio mastering guy. That's why they make all the big money. But
Yeah.
uh, compression and limiting, actually, you'll be amazed how much louder you can make your mix sound.
Yeah.
When done right, that
Sure.
can be a beautiful thing on the main mix, not
Yeah.
just channel compression, but on the main mix, that can really be a big time pal for you.
Yeah.
So
So
here, test file number 5, you can see they're actually going to reduce it. They're going to
so it's
compress it for me.
really loud. Okay.
Yes. So you could
Okay.
say, oh, well, they're going to compress it for you. That's a good thing, right? Because they're going to take care of the compression. No, not necessarily, because you don't know how they're going to compress it.
Might
And
squash it.
yeah, again, you might listen to that and go, that's not what I made. That's not my
Yeah.
song.
Yep.
So in
Okay.
a perfect world, they're not going to do anything to it. In a perfect world, we're going to get it really close where they're not going to make any changes,
Okay.
plus or minus.
Okay.
So let's try another one. And kind of the magic LUFS number seems to be about 14, by the way.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but that just seems to be what works out pretty well.
Okay.
So let's see what we get on test file number 3. I believe I sent the right one here.
Sounds good.
My Goldilocks.
There you
So
go.
here you
It's
can
pretty
see
good.
iTunes 0, Spotify and Pandora half a dB. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yep.
It's we're right in the money zone here. So
Okay. Cool. Well, and we have somebody that just said compression would make a good topic for a future session, and that's great. I think we could definitely talk about that just from, I think, from a like introductory standpoint, but then, kind of taking it to some tips and tricks for those who are already using it. So, yeah, this is so helpful, Ben. Thank you for sharing all of that stuff. It's just so it's it's nice to have a framework to put around things. It's nice to know where to start. And for you who are out there who are just beginning with live stream mixing, you can take away from this that, maybe it's take some trial and error first. Like,
aha, you just said exactly what I was going to say. That's so
yeah,
right. It,
just,
it, it and
yeah.
failure is necessary, I think.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And to me, it sounds a lot like, because I do studio work, it sounds a lot like what you do with a studio mix, right? Like you go, you listen on your AirPods, you listen in your car, you listen in, the on your phone, the tinny little speakers on your phone. And just because, like you're saying, you want to pay attention to what it's sounding like in all those places. And if one of them is sounding awful, then we need to know, like, well, there actually are people who are going to listen on their phone without any headphones, so we need to address that. And
Mhm.
it's just same with live stream, and I think that's really helpful context. So thank you, Ben, appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think that this is harder than mixing live.
Mm,
When I mix live, I have one PA, and I can hear it in real time as
yeah,
I'm mixing. So I think that this can be harder. So I think that, try, fail, ask questions, grow, learn, share what you learned in the group,
yeah,
fail some more, try some more.
yeah.
Uh, so
And then
and
you
don't be
grow.
afraid to seek input.
Hmm.
Seek. I don't want to say criticism, but and seek it from people who will be honest.
Yeah,
Not the person who
absolutely.
say, "Oh, it sounds great." No, listen. I mean, let people be honest with you. And in fact, Neil, since he's watching the show, Neil is a good friend, and we both mix front of house, and we've mixed some festivals together, and we frequently offer each other advice
Yeah,
and suggestions, and
that's great.
I've learned a lot from Neil, and I don't know if he's learned anything from me or not, but we
Yeah,
really enjoy each other. So.
that's great. Yeah, that's great. We all need those people in our lives who can give helpful feedback that helps us grow. So, yeah. Well, everybody, we'll be back again next week. We've got one more of these left in 2020. And, but yeah, join the group on Facebook, guys, and join the conversation. We always love to see the conversation going and share what you've learned, share what is going on in your context, in your communities. And, if you've got a like testimony story or some helpful advice to give as well, join in that conversation. We love that. It's amazing. So thanks, you
Great.
guys. I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks, Ben. We'll see you guys.